Welcome to Deck Analysis and Testing. Today we are looking at a no-gem deck. Yeah, to be honest, I almost forgot that no-gem decks were even a thing that I made videos on. So here's one right now. Blue Eyes in 2023 is a deck based around using the new Blue Eyes exclusive skill to normal summon Blue Eyes without tributing, mill big dragons to revive them immediately with a Monster Reborn, make a big synchros like Spur Dragon, and even bigger ritual monsters like a Chaos Max. That all sounds well and good until you realize that none of these things actually apply to our deck because we don't actually have free to obtain Blue Eyes monsters to fulfill the requirement of the new skill. We've only got 6 of them, and the new skill requires 9. So instead, we're playing a deck that does one thing and one thing only: Fusion summon a big Blue Eyes monster and attack for lethal. Let's see how this deck does this. First of all is of course a Blue Eyes alternative White Dragon. This card is crazy and also free to obtain. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned by revealing a normal Blue Eyes from your hand, and also once per turn you can destroy an opponent's monster, but this card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. This is both a free summon and a way to get rid of your opponent's stuff, and also it treats itself as a regular Blue Eyes on field, so you can just use it as a future material for your new Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Next is obviously the normal Blue Eyes, which you can't actually summon, it's just there for your skill, and just used as a fusion material for your big fusion monster. And finally for our monster is Temperance. This card does only one thing, which is to protect your life points from being attacked, because Ultimate Dragons require you to be using it during the 3rd turn onward, so you will have to not die beforehand, and Temperance will help with that. And speaking of not dying, Hallowed Life Barrier is also a pretty good free-to-play trap that you can play that ensure you not lose before you can activate your skill, because when you activate this card by discarding a card, you take no damage for the rest of your turn. So even if your opponent tries to MST this card as the first thing they do during their turn, you can still chain this card in response and prevent you from taking any battle damage until the end of the turn. For the spells, we're playing 3 copies of Summoner's Art, which searches the regular Blue Eyes. We're playing Free Melody, which discards a card to search 2 dragons from your deck, which has 2500 or less defense and 3000 or more attack, which can be alternative or the regular Blue Eyes, so you can just grab whatever depending on the stuff you have in your hand already. And finally, Anti-Magic Arrows is a pretty interesting spell which stops your opponent from activating any spell traps during their battle phase. This is usually not very good because they can just use their spells and traps during their main phase, during your main phase when you summon your stuff. But because of how this deck works, this deck makes out a copy of a Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which doesn't really do anything in the main phase, so skilled players usually will wait until the battle phase to use their disruptions like a Book of Moon, because they're going to try to save your disruptions in case you still have other stuff that you want to summon. So when you enter your battle phase, you get turn player priority, so you get to immediately activate Anti-Magic Arrows, and this card, for some reason, is Spell Speed 4, which means your opponent cannot activate any cards or effects in response to this card. So as soon as you click the battle phase button, you immediately are safe from any sort of spell trap disruptions, as long as you have Anti-Magic Arrows in your hand. And for the extra deck, we're only actually going to use one monster in this entire 8-card slot, which is going to be Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, because the other stuff is just filler. You can play whatever you want. I'm just playing these nice looking synchro monsters because they look cool, but you can play whatever. Neo Blue Eyes is our main win con. It requires 3 Blue Eyes as material, and it has the effect that if it attacks at the end of the damage step, If this is the only face-up card you control, you could send a Blue Eyes Fusion Monster from your extra deck to your graveyard, and this card can attack again in a row, and can use this effect 2 times per turn. So this card can attack 3 times in a single turn, as long as you don't have any other face-up cards on your field. So this card can win games on its own, and also it has a ton of attacks, so attacking 3 times will usually win you the game. And also it has a very underwhelming graveyard effect that you probably won't use, because it requires you to banish itself from the graveyard to negate an effect that targets a Blue Eyes monster you control. But usually if you already have a Neo Blue Eyes in your graveyard, you already won, because you can attack 3 times, so you probably won't use this effect at all. And finally, let's have a look at the skill. Because we can't use the new exclusive Blue Eyes skill that lets you normal summon Blue Eyes for free, we have to use the older Blue Eyes skill instead. Ultimate Dragons is still a pretty good skill, all things considered, and it lets you add all 3 Blue Eyes fusions to your extra deck at the beginning of the duel, including a normal Blue Eyes Ultimate, a Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate, and a Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. Twin Burst Dragon is not your main plan, but if you don't have enough Blue Eyes in your hand or field to make your Neo Blue Eyes, which needs 3 Blue Eyes, you can just use 2 of them to make a Twin Burst Dragon, which is not as good because it can't attack 3 times, and also it doesn't have as much attack, but it's still pretty decent, so it might as well work. And also, this skill has another effect that on turn 3 onward, by revealing 2 Blue Eyes in your hand, you can add a poly from outside your deck to your hand for free. That's why we don't actually need to play any fusion spells in our deck to make our fusion monsters, because the skill will do it for us. Okay, let's have a look at the replays. In our first game, we were playing against Yubel, which is kind of a meta deck still. So it usually has a really good matchup against Blue Eyes, so let's see how well our deck faces against them. So we're going first, and yep, this is what we're going to do going first. We literally do nothing and end turn. And even if we're going second, we're still going to end turn, because we can only use the skill on turn 3 onward, so we're going to have to not die before we reach turn 3. Our opponent will be making an Ultimate Nightmare, which is usually very frustrating, but because we don't have any monsters, we don't actually take any damage from it. He's going to set 2 cards, which is worrying, but we do have an anti-magic arrows in our hand, so as long as our opponent doesn't activate them during the main phase, we're fine. We can pop his Ultimate Nightmare with our alternative, which is nice because we can't destroy it by battle. We're going to activate the poly that we add from our skill to make our Neo Blue Eyes, and then we go to battle, and as soon as we hit battle, we are safe because we can just activate anti-magic arrows and attack for game. It is just that simple. Okay, in our second game, we were playing against Ultrageist, and we're going second. And as I said, even if we're going second, our board is pretty much the same, which is nothing. It's barely even the board. But we do have an alternative white dragon, so at least we can poke in for a bit of damage, even if we can't make our fusion monsters. We're going to summon our alternative white dragon, which has a really nice animation. He's going to Warning Point, which prevents us from going in for 3k damage, but he is going to summon a Multi-Faker and summon a Socrates that will be able to bounce our trap back to our hand. And he's going to bounce our alternative during our turn, which is fine because we can just summon it back. And then we're going to destroy his monster. We're going to grab our second Blue Eyes to our hand and activate our skill to reveal the 2 Blue Eyes to add the poly. And we're going to fusion summon using 2 Blue Eyes plus the alternative on field to make our Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. And once we hit the battle phase, we can again use anti-magic arrows, and even though we can't go for lethal in one hit, we can just simply send a fusion from our extra to our graveyard to attack a second time, and that will be well over lethal. In our third game, we were playing against Chronomalies, and actually he is not using the usual Chronomaly skill that you see people play. Gateway to Another Dimension is a pretty strong skill. It changes their levels to whatever you want by sending monsters from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, but it locks you into light number monsters and Chronomaly monsters. So instead, this guy is not playing that skill, and he's playing another Chronomaly skill, which lets him play more diverse extra deck options instead. We're going to make a Blue Eyes alternative, plus a Howled Life Barrier, and hope for the best. He is going to make Gorgonic Guardian, which he usually won't be able to make because it is not a light number, but because he's not using the regular Chronomaly skill, he will be able to do that. He's going to again summon another Nebula Disc to grab a Crystal Skull, and grab another Nebula Disc, just setting up for next turn. He's gonna attack for a bit of damage, and since that's not enough for lethal, we're not going to waste our Howled Life Barrier, and instead we're just gonna let it slide. And during our own turn, we're going to force him to use the negate by summoning our own alternative White Dragon, so when we make our fusion, we can be uninterrupted. But because he negated our alternative, his name becomes its original name, which isn't Blue Eyes White Dragon, so we can't use it as a fusion material for our newer Blue Eyes, so instead we can only make it the Twin Burst, which is probably good enough. We can still clear his board even though we can't go for lethal this turn. He's going to summon his Nebula Disc and grab a really weird card that I've never seen in my life before, and use Crystal Skull to grab a new card that I have seen before. And this card is a really good starter, which allows you to tribute itself to grab a monster from the deck. And he's going to use his skill to grab him a free monster on field and make Vimana. And Vimana is annoying because it has a monster negate plus an attack boosting effect, which will probably win him the game if I didn't have Howled Life Barrier, because look at my life points. If he attacks my Blue Eyes, I just lose for battle damage, but since I have a Howled Life Barrier, I can just activate it, and my monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, plus I take no damage, and in my next turn I can just attack with my Blue Eyes and attack twice to get rid of both of his monsters and go for lethal with alternative. So as soon as I activate my Howled Life Barrier, he realizes that, and he's just going to scoop. Good game.